Hi, this is Cheryl and welcome to my sewing room. I'm going to demonstrate how to make this gorgeous Fat Quarter Christmas quilt, and it is so easy. I'll show you a really fast method for cutting out all those squares, and guess what? On the back there's fleece. But before I get started, I want you to know that I have lots and lots of Christmas videos on a variety of projects. So at the end of this video, I will give you a link to connect to all these fun things. This is a lap size quilt. Mine came out to 39 inches wide by 54.5 inches long. Now there is no cotton batting in this quilt. Instead, you're using fleece. So for this size, you will need 1 yard of fleece that is 59 inches wide. You'll also need 2 fat quarter packs. They're also called bundles, and they'll have anywhere between 4 and 5 different fat quarters in it. You'll also need a half a yard of fabric for the binding. This is one of the fat quarter packs that I'm using. I've decided to use Christmas fabric, but you can pick any kind of fabric you like to make this quilt. After removing the ribbon, open up all of your fat quarters. And if you are going to pre-wash them before you cut into them to prevent shrinkage, then make sure before washing you do a little zigzag stitch around the 3 raw edges. Then of course wash, dry, and give it a good pressing before you cut into the fabric. I have layered all of my fat quarters together because I want to cut them all out at the same time. If you're going to do that, I recommend you use a 60mm rotary cutter. The larger the blade, the easier it is to go through multiple layers of fabric. If you're using a 45mm blade, then I would not cut more than 2 to 3 layers at a time. So after stacking your fat quarters, on this first line right here, I call it the 0 line, pull all your fabrics past that edge because we're going to cut this first edge straight. Take your rotary cutting ruler and line it up on that 0 line. And once you have it lined up, then make sure you're pressing firmly down because you are going through a lot. Press firmly down and press firmly with your rotary cutter. And you might have to do 2 passes to get it done. After you've done that, then you're going to move your rotary cutting ruler over to the 5.5 inch line. So go ahead and line that up here as well as down here. Always check both ends of your ruler. Then you're going to continue cutting. Your next cut would be on the 11 inch line, and your last cut would be on the 16 inch line. Now take your first row of strips and line it up on a line going straight across here, and pull the raw edges at this end past this 0 line because now we're going to cut this edge straight. So after you've got it all lined up, make sure you check your ruler on the line here and there so you have everything nice and square. Press firmly down and cut. Now again, go over every 5.5 inches. Make sure that ruler is lined up. Press firmly down and cut. Then go over to the 11 inch line, and then your last cut would be on the 16.5 inch line. And you'll have a piece over here left over. Save that for a future project and just keep stacking them as you cut. Next step is to take all of your squares and just randomly lay them out. Now as I was laying mine out, I wound up with 8 squares in each row, and I wound up with 11 rows. Now take each row and begin stacking them. And then I usually put a little note on it, row 1, and then stack the next one all the way down. And after you've gathered up all of these, put a little label on it saying row 2, and continue all the way down till you've got all of your rows labeled. Starting with row 1, take your first square and then the second square, bring it on top, and stitch 1/4 inch along this edge. Then open it up and place the next square on top of this one and stitch 1/4 inch. And continue on down, placing the next square on top, stitching 1/4 inch. Do this for all your rows. After you've got all of your rows stitched, you need to press your seams, and I can't stress enough the importance of pressing. It can make or break the way your quilt turns out. So you need to press the back side of your seams first. So I'm looking at the back side. I'm going to grab this seam over here, and I'm going to lift the row up and place it down like this. I'm still looking at the back side, and I have my first block folded underneath. So I'm just going to pick this iron up and press, and lay it down again and press. And keep doing this until you've got it all pressed. And you just keep going on down this row, and it really can go fast. And press the last one. Now, here's the back side still. Now I'm gonna turn it over to the front, and I'm gonna lift this row up, and I want to press this seam here, all of the seams going that way. So keep the block lifted and push the side of your iron towards that seam, and you just keep this lifted. And one more seam. And there you go. And that's how you press your rows really fast. After you've got all of your rows stitched and pressed, I usually lay mine back out like this, and I keep the little row numbers attached so I don't get mixed up. And now you're ready for the next step, which is to stitch all the rows together. One of the things that I forgot to mention in the pressing segment is when you are pressing your rows in a specific direction, you're going to press every other row in the opposite direction of the previous row, because that's a real important step. So try to remember to do that, because otherwise you're going to run into problems later. So now you want to take your first 2 rows and place row 2 on top of row 1. Now you're going to match your seams. So this is where it's important your seams were pressed in the correct direction. So you want to take this seam and make sure it's going in the opposite direction than the one on top. So the bottom seam is going to my right, the one on top is going to my left. And make sure it's nice and flat in there and the seams are right next to each other. And place a pin to hold. This is very important. And then go over to the next seam and match those seams up. And again, make sure those seams are going in opposite direction, and place a pin again. And continue going down the full length of the strip. Then when you are done, you want to go and stitch a 1/4 inch seam all the way down. So from this raw edge, come in 1/4 inch and stitch, and do this with all your rows. After you have stitched your rows together, you need to press the seams on each row. So first press the seam on the back side to make it flat. Then unfold it, and with your iron, push against that seam on all the rows so that it goes in one direction all the way across. This is what it looks like on the back side. In each row, that row is pressed in one direction all the way across. This makes it much easier when you go to do your quilting stitches when you're ready to do your layering. Now your quilt is ready to put the fleece on the back. So here's my fleece. This is the back side of my fleece. So lay it with the back side facing up. Then take your quilt top, this is the back side. You're going to put that back side against the back side of the fleece. Then take a long ruler like this and just glide it across the quilt top. Don't press hard to where you're stretching it. And this takes all the lumps and bumps out of it. Then take straight pins and you're going to place them all over the quilt to hold the layers together. So you're going to put quite a few on there because you want it to hold up. Then you're going to start on one side of the quilt and stitch in the ditch, okay? Right there, that's where two pieces of fabric come together. Then go over here, do the same thing. After you've gone all the way across that way, then you're going to start at one end and begin to stitch in the ditch going across this way. One more thing I want to mention that will make it easier for you when you do your stitch in the ditch is roll your quilt up like you see here and stick the roll underneath the arm of your sewing machine, and as you stitch each roll, as you stitch each row, you just unroll it a little bit and stitch the next roll, and unroll it a little bit and continue like that until you're done. This will make it much easier for you to control your quilt, and your stitches will be a lot more even. After you've done all your stitch in the ditch, remove the safety pins, then place your ruler on top, and you're going to place it on the edge of your quilt top and line it up nice and straight, and then take a rotary cutter and then trim those edges off on all four sides. After you've done that, it's ready for your quilt binding. Depending on the size of the quilt you made, you're going to need either 4 to 5 strips of quilt binding. Cut them 2 3/4 inches wide, and then if you don't know how to put them on a quilt, then click on this link in the upper right hand corner and it will tell you how it will give you instructions, on how to put your quilt binding on. If you like this video, click on thumbs up. Then click on share to share this video with your friends. And if you haven't subscribed yet, click on that red button in the lower right hand corner of your screen. Enter your email address. Click on the bell so you receive future email notifications about my latest video. This is Sue. This is Manny. This is Steve. See you next time. Happy sewing. Bye-bye.